Lebanon's Hezbollah said it launched missiles and drones at a military facility in northern Israel in retaliation for strikes that killed members of the group. Now, the Israeli military said the incident left 14 soldiers wounded. The military said 6 of the soldiers were in serious condition. It said it struck the sources of fire after identifying several anti-tank missile and drone launches from Lebanon towards the Bedouin village of Arab al-Aramshe. According to the Lebanese security forces, Israeli strikes on Tuesday killed 3 people, including a Hezbollah field commander. Israeli National Security Minister called for the war cabinet to be disbanded. As per reports, Itamar Ben-Gvir said, "It's time to dismantle the concept cabinet, stop the policy of containment and proportionality and show our enemies who's in charge." Now, the Israeli forces and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire for over 6 months in parallel to the Gaza war, in the most serious hostilities since they fought a major war in 2006. Israeli jets hit Hezbollah infrastructure north of Baalbek in East Lebanon, reaching beyond the southern border region, where Tel Aviv has focused most of its strikes. Gaza officials slammed Israel as the Israeli airstrike struck an UNRWA school. 4 people were killed, and that included 2 children. Dozens others were injured. An Israeli military official stated the Air Force is preparing the country's air defenses for future attacks from Iran. The Arrow 3 system, designed to intercept long-range ballistic missiles, was deployed successfully against a missile salvo for the first time over the weekend. Now, the Arrow's success on Saturday night is likely to please Germany, which recently signed a contract with Israel and the United States to procure the system. Egypt and Israel signed a peace agreement in 1979 to end hostilities and normalize relations. Peace has been maintained through 2 Palestinian uprisings and a series of wars between Israel and Hamas. But now, with Netanyahu vowing to send Israeli troops into Rafah, Cairo is threatening to void the agreement. Netanyahu says Rafah is Hamas's last remaining stronghold, and sending in ground troops is essential to defeat the group. However, Egypt opposes any move that could send desperate Palestinians fleeing across the border onto its territory. Rafah also serves as a crucial entry point for humanitarian aid, and an Israeli attack could stifle the deliveries of key supplies. Dia Rashwan, the spokesperson for the Egyptian Ministry of Information, hit out at Israel. He said, and I'm quoting here, "Does Israel fully understand the meaning of Egypt's warnings against entering Rafah?" He added, Netanyahu said he would overthrow Hamas, free the hostages, and ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel's security. He failed. Now, along with Qatar, Egypt helped broker a truce in November that saw the release of hostages in exchange for prisoners held by Israel and more aid deliveries into Gaza. Cairo is facing significant pressure from many directions, given its unparalleled historic role in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, as per the United States Institute of Peace, there are 6 major dilemmas facing Egypt. Except for a few diplomatic clashes, mostly related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Egypt and Israel have succeeded in maintaining constructive relations since 1979. Both countries view relations as critical to their interests and have sought to maintain and strengthen the relationship. However, Israel's practices towards the Palestinians have challenged and placed limitations on the extent of what is possible. The relations between Egypt and the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad have seen their ups and downs in recent years. Some analysts say Egypt would prefer a new Palestinian leadership. But at the same time, it has not been eager to see elections take place out of fear that they would be a repeat of the 2006 elections when Hamas won. Ever since then Egyptian President Anwar Sadat visited Jerusalem in 1977, Cairo has been extremely active in advancing the prospects of peace. It has had a long-standing position of supporting the pursuit of a two-state solution. However, the Israeli-Palestinian context and their respective leaderships have made this task increasingly challenging. Palestinian refugee issues are complicated as they are linked to the historical fears of mass transfer and the liquidation of the Palestinian cause. Egypt considers this fear more justified today, given statements from some members of the Israeli government openly promoting the desirability of Palestinian migration. Earlier, reports hinted at an Israeli ministry concept paper that proposed the transfer of Gazans to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula as a possible scenario. The perception in Egypt and many Arab nations is that Israel wants to get rid of its problems in Gaza and have them become the responsibility of others, particularly that of Egypt. Predictably, Egypt has rejected this stance. Cairo has insisted Gaza is a part of the Palestinian territory and therefore remains Israel's responsibility according to the international law until the occupation ends. Last but not the least, Egypt is facing an unprecedented set of simultaneous challenges that have huge implications for its national security. These include the current war in Sudan, the continued conflict in Libya, and the continued failure to resolve the dispute with Ethiopia on the Renaissance Dam. As a result of the ongoing war, Houthis have disrupted maritime transportation in the Red Sea, which will have a significant impact on the revenues of the Suez Canal. This is also taking place at a time when Egypt is suffering from a severe economic crisis. Now, Russian forces are being withdrawn from Azerbaijan's Karabakh region, where they have been stationed as peacekeepers since the end of a war in 2020. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov confirmed reports of the withdrawal. Now, the Karabakh region had been under the control of ethnic Armenians until a war in 2020 that resulted in Azerbaijan regaining control of parts of the area. That war ended with a Russia-brokered ceasefire that called for placing about 2,000 peacekeeping troops in the parts of Karabakh that was still held by Armenians. The forces' duties were to include ensuring free passage on the sole road connecting Karabakh with Armenia. But Azerbaijan began blocking the road in late 2022. Alleging Armenians were using it for weapons shipments and to smuggle minerals, and the Russian forces did not intervene. After months of increasingly dire food and medicine shortages in Karabakh due to the blockade, Azerbaijan launched a lighting blitz in September of 2023. The blitz forced the Karabakh Armenian authorities to capitulate after one day in negotiations mediated by Russian forces. Almost all of Karabakh's 50,000 ethnic Armenian residents fled the region within days. Now, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has lauded the India-US relationship. While speaking to the lawmakers of House Appropriations Subcommittee, Austin said the deal between New Delhi and Washington to jointly produce fighter jets engines for the Indian Air Force is revolutionary. Emphasizing America's great relationship with India, the US Defense Secretary said, "The US has enabled India to produce a jet weapon, a jet engine in India." Now, according to Austin, that is revolutionary. He says America is also co-producing an armored vehicle with India. The comments made by the US Defense Secretary comes as back in June of last year. The American President Joe Biden and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi signed off on a deal that gave new wings to the India-US ties. Under the deal, US-based jet engine manufacturer General Electric and India's Hindustan Aeronautics Limited signed a memorandum of understanding to produce combat aircraft engines for the Indian Air Force. GE Aerospace's F414 engines will be co-produced in India to power the Tejas light combat aircraft. Now, pertinent to note here, India can manufacture fighter aircrafts domestically. But through the key deal, India has now secured the technical know-how to make aircraft engines. Remember, India aims to produce over 350 fighters for the Air Force and the Navy over the next 2 decades. The Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf founder and the jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan has alleged that the army chief, General Asim Munir, was directly responsible for the imprisonment of his wife, Bushra Bibi. Now, the 49-year-old Bushra Bibi was convicted in a corruption case as well as in the case of illegal marriage with the 71-year-old Khan. She is currently held in detention at their Bani Gala residence in the suburbs of Islamabad. Khan alleged that Pakistan's army chief, General Asim Munir, is directly involved in the sentence awarded to Bushra Bibi. He added that the judge who convicted her said that he was forced to make the decision. Khan has now threatened the army chief. He said, and I'm quoting him here, "If anything happens to my wife, I will not leave Asim Munir. I will not leave Asim Munir as long as I'm alive. I will expose his unconstitutional and illegal steps." End of quote. Khan further said that there was a law of the jungle in the country and all was being done by the king of the jungle, referring to Nawaz Sharif. He also said that PTI was being stopped from contesting in the by-elections. So far, the army has not responded to the serious allegations. Just a day before, Bushra Bibi submitted a petition to the Islamabad High Court in which she said that she was poisoned through food in prison and has serious concerns and reservations about the food being provided to her in jail. The petition was, however, dismissed by the court. Now, the Biden administration has initiated a formal review of China's maritime, logistics and shipbuilding sector, citing concerns over trade practices. Now, China swiftly condemned the investigation, labeling it as a political move. Now, the U.S. Trade Representative's office faced criticism from the Chinese Commerce Ministry, which dismissed the allegations as false and urged adherence to multilateral trade rules. Meanwhile, President Biden's push for higher tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminium further exacerbates tensions between the two economic powers.
America's still working out-compete as long as they have fair competition. But for too long, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese steel companies, pushing them to make so much steel as much as possible, subsidized by the Chinese government. Because Chinese steel companies produce a lot more steel than China needs, it ends up dumping extra steel into the global markets at unfairly low prices.
Now, the impact of Biden's stance on the U.S. steel is palpable, as Japanese firm Nippon Steel's proposed acquisition of U.S. Steel Corporation and faces uncertainty. The market response remains mixed, with the U.S. Steel shares experiencing fluctuations amidst the ongoing acquisition saga. As the U.S.-China trade relationship hangs in the balance, the implications of Biden's actions reverberate globally. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.